call for a national database on police misconduct. You have the power to ask for a registry that will allow people to easily search in public multiple misconduct complaints against particular officers. You have the ability to impose a database around police killings and police shootings. And these are things that you can do by executive order. There is a prison tragedy that is unfolding because of COVID. I encourage you to use your power to order an investigation of state.
He knows how it happened. He orchestrated it. How are you asking the arsonist to put out the fire? And that's what I want everybody to understand. Joe Biden is literally the mass incarceration arsonist. He literally set fire to everything and burnt down the whole fucking village. And then y'all hired this bastard to come in and put out the fire.
And you not even that. You let everybody else talk you into believing this motherfucker was gonna put out a fire. He came on stage with his ass lit on fire. He came out there looking like Heat Miser, and you think this motherfucker gonna put out fire? What the fuck, man? I had this discussion with people in my life. I ain't gonna name nobody. I had this discussion with people in my life, and they're like, "Yeah, Trump is gone." And you think things are gonna get better for black folks with Biden in office? For real?
Hell to the no. Hell to the no.
They locking up niggas already. Biden didn't even get in. Biden in office. Right? They locking up hip hop niggas left, and the hip hop cops was going off the rails.
Man, right? They was like, "Oh, Lil Wayne, you want to endorse Trump? Get your black ass over here."
Get your black ass over there. They locking up niggas left and right. Yeah, Casanova 2 times. I mean, they locking up everybody. All right. Anybody else got anything while we're here?
No.
And local prisons and jails to find out precisely what is happening, and you have that power through the Department of Justice.
And here's Al Sharpton.
Hold on, damn. Boy, Al Sharpton get in because he about to say some wild shit, boy.
You're gonna love it. Al Sharpton
about to get wild. What you say, Sam? My bad.
Al Sharpton's awesome. Go ahead, give us your take.
Hey yo, man, this shit is fucking crazy. But nah, just to piggyback on what y'all said, man, like this shit gonna be. I think the Trump years is like to me. The Trump, I seen Trump as a Ronald Reagan type figure in policy. I see him as a loud Ronald Reagan. Yeah, my bad.
No, you're right.
And can we even say Trump was less racist than Ronald Reagan? Because Ronald Reagan really put some pain on our communities.
I think policy-wise he was, though. I think policy-wise, like real shit, like you go policy for policy. Like Ronald
I'm
Reagan
saying he is a Reagan-esque. I'm just saying he just wasn't quite as bad as Reagan. But please keep going. I'm gonna stop talking over you, John. Go ahead.
Oh I definitely agree. I think that motherfucking like the thing about Trump is that there's certain things like real shit like Ronald Reagan would never pass no motherfucking First Step. Even though First Step Act is weaker than motherfucking Mini-Me, that shit weak as hell. That shit was just some straight. Feel me? Like the thing about the fact that a Republican can do some weak shit. You feel me? Like real shit and take and make black women and black men's vote double. It just shows the failure of the Democratic Party, man. Like you feel me? Like real shit. Like he just let like 2 niggas out of prison and shit. And Ronald Reagan would never let nobody. He would never let nobody out of prison. And then what Ronald Reagan did on immigration as well. I always say, like Republicans really had a Ronald Reagan stance on immigration. Motherfucking Latinos be voting 50% Republican. You know what I mean? Immediately and shit like that. But you know what? It's just like I don't know. The Trump years was rough. Don't get it fucked up. It was rough. Got COVID, the tax cuts, the gentrification was kicking off and everything. Like real shit. Police blowing our brains out as usual. Like these was rough years, but. The Trump years, I mean, the Biden years is gonna be like we gotta fight erasure now. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, it's something serious. No, you ain't.
Yeah, that's all I gotta say. My bad.
Yeah, no. I'm saying you preaching.
Yeah, it's gonna get worse for us, right? And for us alone. You know what I mean? Everybody else is gonna be good. It's gonna get worse for us.
I was on Clubhouse with an activist who was telling me that like somebody who was doing work with him got murdered by the cops, and like. You know, activists down where he's at are like kind of having to figure out like really pay attention to how they move. So this shit is real. Like, you know, we already know what happened to the majority of the activists who were in Ferguson, yeah, the ones who were
Ferguson, yeah.
really boots on the ground, the ones who were really organizing before the vultures came in and swooped up and took the money. But and I, you know, if you don't know the story, I'm not gonna name no names. You can do some research, but look up what was the brother's name? Darius. I don't know.
Darren Shields.
Darren Seals, right? Darren Seals. Yeah, so he was murdered, and like 6 or 7 activists from that particular time in protest were murdered. So this is not coincidence. This is real. Like, you know, but we got to get out here and we got to fight regardless, because they're going to come for us one way or the other. It's like, oh my God, I wish I could. Okay, so I watched Lovecraft Country, and there's this moment where Hippolyta talks about how she hates, I'm not going to get into the exact words, but I want to paraphrase it for this conversation. And she was talking about how instead of letting them lynch her, they basically just lynched her slowly over decades. So basically, y'all are letting them strangle all of us. No, they're killing all of us. They're killing all of our families, not just ADOS families. Like, they are killing the middle class. Like, white people are dying right now from opioid addiction. All races are killing themselves right now. Like, we are losing American citizens everywhere. And we're allowing it to happen. It's just a slow murder. Like, if they came to all of our houses and just started killing us off, if they just started coming to all of our houses right now and killing us off, we would fight back. But since they're doing it little by little, like they're doing it economically, right? They're making people feel like they have nowhere to go. So instead of fighting, people just give up in despair and they kill themselves. But we need y'all to fight. Like, if you gonna die, die for something. Like, be out here in the fight.
Yeah, but the big problem is people are glad Biden is in office so they can go back to sleep.
I was just going to say that.
But that's those upper middle class whites. We need to be talking to the people who are poor. Like, that's the difference. The people who are in charge, even with most of these parties that you see, when you look at the official leadership, they're fucking rich. And then the other people who, these so-called progressives that have all these fucking movements, if you look at them, they're all upper middle class white people. So they still don't have the same struggle as poor people. They don't even have the same struggle as poor white people. So it's time for the poors to rise up and tell these
the left has been taken over by, I've said it before and I'm gonna continue to say it, the left has been taken over by a privileged few. It is what it is.
Yeah.
You can mad at me
and it's
all
time
the fuck you want.
And it's time for the poors to stand up and be like, we're not fucking doing this. This is not going to be, we're not going to fix you middle class people by giving you a couple of trinkets so you can feel good while we're still going to be sitting around here fucking starving, or while you make us stable poor. We don't want to be stable poor. Everybody wants to be middle class. So what are you doing to make everybody middle class? I want to be 1950s white picket motherfucking fence middle class. It don't have to be in that form, but but we got climate change and everything else coming. Why aren't we building new constructs? Like, we are still living, this country is slow. Like, I don't like, if you think about like how fast the technology and just everything in progress happened in the early development in this country, and you think about like the last 50 years, like outside of like most of the stuff that has been created has been a lot of bullshit. Like phones are good and it's good to communicate, but like, what are we creating like systems wise to make all people's lives better, right? Like,
our infrastructure is trash.
Everywhere.
The thing is that the reason why all this is happening is because before they could just ignore us or avoid us or push us out of whatever program they're doing. Now that we have to be a consideration, that's why all these things can't get done. I'm sorry, but with this Biden shit, like, we're talking about the poor people are going to get lost in the mix because the media is not going to pay attention. It's not like with Trump where they're going to like throw every bad thing that happens in his face. They're going to go to sleep and they're going to try to act like none of this shit is happening.
Just like they did under Obama. That's how Obama was able to win a Nobel Peace Prize while bombing the shit out of poor brown people in foreign countries. Innocent people. He wasn't just sitting around getting terrorists. He was hitting these kids, mothers, grandmothers, shit.
John, what you got?
It's the way that I feel like this is going to be rough years for us, man. The family's going to be rough years for any of those people. Just the way that he's talking to, you know what I mean, used to take a little black leaders, man.
He
You know what I mean?
already
Like,
talking greasy and he ain't even took office yet.
he's man, nigga,
He's gonna be on some fuck you nigga shit, which see, that's my first
yeah.
one. Yeah, one
All right.
ding.
All right. Well, he gonna say fuck you. He on this fucking. You right, Sam? He on this fuck you Negro. So he like, oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I use, and this is another reason why. You feel me? Like, well, it's two things that both parties lean on. Both parties, you feel me, lean on because they feel me on black issues, which is voting rights and criminal justice. Like, you know what I mean? Like, two things that cost the country nothing. Two things that, feel me, will actually benefit the majority. Feel me, not us, not
Say
us
that.
as a
Say that
minority.
again, John. Say
Yeah,
that again. You said that cost the country nothing.
nothing.
That ding, ding, ding.
Fighting for voting rights and fighting for criminal justice cost the country nothing.
Were looking to the South, and they supported the struggles of the South. Now they're coming to see that their problems are very real, and they've got organized to grapple with them.
Was there something hypocritical about the fact that the South existed and the North could point the finger? And then when the Civil Rights Acts were passed in the early 60s, you couldn't point the finger anymore?
Well, there was no doubt about the hypocrisy of large segments of the nation on the whole question of racial equality. I think the best example is that many of the senators from the North and the West, and congressmen generally, who voted for civil rights legislation in 64 and even 65 with the Voting Rights Bill, refused last year to vote for civil rights legislation because it dealt with an issue applicable to the North, the whole housing question. And this, it seems to me, was the greatest expression of the hypocrisy of many of our citizens and many of the senators and congressmen of the North.
But isn't that part of the dilemma now? That people knew that Negroes were being denied what was guaranteed to them by the Constitution, by the fact that they were citizens of this country. Then when they were given those rights, do you feel the white community said, well, we've given them all that we have, now it's up to them?
Well, I think the dilemma is much deeper, and I think one during this period of transition has to be very honest with America. And honesty impels me to admit that America has broad racist elements still alive. Racism is still existing in American society in many areas of the society, North and South. And the other thing is that there has never been a single, solid, determined commitment of large segments of white America on the whole question of racial equality. I think we have to see that vacillation has always existed, ambivalence has always existed, and this to me is the so-called white backlash. It's merely a new name for an old phenomenon. I see the white backlash as a continuation of the same ambivalence and vacillation of white America on the whole question of racial justice that has existed since the founding of our nation. I think the other thing that we must see at this time is that many of the people who supported us in Selma, in Birmingham, were really outraged about the extremist behavior toward Negroes. But they were not at that moment, and they are not now, committed to genuine equality for Negroes. It's much easier to integrate a lunch counter than it is to guarantee an annual income, for instance, to get rid of poverty for Negroes and all poor people. It's much easier to integrate a bus than it is to make genuine integration a reality and quality education a reality in our schools. It's much easier to integrate even a public park than it is to get rid of slums. And I think we are in a new era, a new phase of the struggle, where we have moved from a struggle for decency, which characterized our struggle for 10 or 12 years, to a struggle for genuine equality. And this is where we are getting the resistance, because there was never any intention to go this far. People were reacting to Bull Connor and to Jim Clark rather than acting in good faith for the realization of genuine equality.
Do you think white people in this country, and I'm talking about non-segregationist, people devoid or thinking they're devoid of racism. Do you have any idea of what they want the Negro to be in America?
Well, it depends on the level that we are talking here, because I think you have to make a distinction between the people who are genuinely and absolutely committed in the white community on the question of racial equality. And I must confess that I think they're in a very small minority. I think the vast majority of white Americans will go but so far. It's a kind of installment plan for equality, and they are always looking for an excuse to go but so far.
Why are they looking for the excuse? What is it about the Negro? I mean, every other group that came as an immigrant somehow, not easily, but somehow got around it. Is it just the fact that Negroes are black?
That's a part of it, and that grows out of something else. You can't thingify anything without depersonalizing that something. If you use something as a means to an end, at that moment you make it a thing and you depersonalize it. The fact is that the Negro was a slave in this country for 244 years. That was a willful thing that was done. The Negro was brought here in chains, treated in very inhuman fashion, and this led to the thingification of the Negro. So he was not looked upon as a person. He was not looked upon as a human being with the same status and worth as other human beings. And the other thing is that human beings cannot continue to do wrong without eventually rationalizing that wrong. So slavery was justified morally, biologically, theoretically, scientifically, everything else. And it seems to me that white America must see that no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil. That is one thing that other immigrant groups haven't had to face. The other thing is that the color became a stigma. American society made the Negro's color a stigma, and that can never be overlooked. So I think these things are absolutely necessary. The other thing is that America freed the slaves in 1863 through the Emancipation Proclamation of Abraham Lincoln, but gave the slaves no land or nothing in reality, and as a matter of fact, to get started on. At the same time, America was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and the Midwest, which meant that there was a willingness to give the white peasants from Europe an economic base. And yet it refused to give its black peasants from Africa, who came here involuntarily in chains and had worked free for 244 years, any kind of economic base. And so emancipation for the Negro was really freedom to hunger. It was freedom to the winds and rains of heaven. It was freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate, and therefore it was freedom and famine at the same time. And when white Americans tell the Negro to lift himself by his own bootstraps, they don't look over the legacy of slavery and segregation. I believe we ought to do all we can and seek to lift ourselves by our own bootstraps, but it's a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And many,
you know what I mean? Like, cost them nothing. I don't give a fuck. Nothing. To be honest with you, what the Democratic Party is trying to do is just extend motherfuckers' voting rights so we could just be a permanent real shit and stabilize it somewhat to be a permanent voting underclass and just be at the bottom. And the Republican Party could just do a fraction of that shit because the Democrats don't care that much. They don't really give a fuck about this. Like, you know what I'm saying? They could just say, like, this is for black people, though, voting rights. If like, see that? What Democrats do is, like, it's for voting rights for everybody, but it's going to help you, black person. And Republicans say, this is just for black people, but they're not really doing this shit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's levels to this shit. They both playing games and shit. And that lets you know, like, both parties going to let motherfuckers down. And this Biden year is going to be rough for motherfuckers. Y'all niggas better saddle up and ready to fight.
If you're brave enough to go out there and sell some dope on the corner, like, you should be brave enough to fight for some goddamn reparations.
Right.
Listening to Reset Race, you now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race, you're now tuned in to Reset Race. What? Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling reset race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to reset race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake. On the edge, go back to U.S. Southern plantations. Penniers, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration. Redlining lynchings. We are old from this nation. You're not about justice if you ain't for reparations. MG, the wise one. Cousin Mother, intellectual. Samantha, bringing fire. Anti-black, we pressing you. No permanent friends and no permanent enemies. The backbone of the country. To win, you need our energy. You gon' see. Listening to Reset Race. You now tuned in to Reset Race. You're listening to Reset Race. You're now tuned in to Reset Race. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Put them back on the grill again. We grilling them. Back on the grill again. We grilling them. You're listening to Reset Race. ADOS need reparations to make America great. You're tuned in to Reset Race. We no longer starving while others eat off our plate. No. You're listening to Reset Race. We focused on our justice claim. We know what is at stake. You're tuned in to Reset Race. You'll find out who really about justice and really who fake.